Let's get straight to it. We're going to forge a really powerful link between the way we teach and the way we test. Think of it as building a bridge between two of the biggest names in language teaching, Jeremy Harmer and H. Douglas Brown, to create a classroom that's just smarter and more responsive. All right, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with Harmer's ESA model, then look at some really cool ways to sequence it. From there, we'll pivot to Brown's 5 essential principles for assessment. Then, the most important part, we'll connect the two and see exactly how it works with a real-world example. Okay, first things first, let's lay down the foundation with Jeremy Harmer's model. It's called ESA, and these 3 letters are the absolute building blocks for pretty much any lesson you can think of. The first block is E for engage. Now, this is so much more than just a quick warm-up. This is about grabbing your students' attention, sparking their curiosity, and getting them emotionally invested. When they're hooked like that, learning just happens. Next up, we've got S for study. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty. We zoom in on the language itself, the grammar rules, the new vocabulary, how to pronounce something. It's the nuts and bolts of how the language is actually built. And finally, A for activate. This is where the magic happens. Students take everything they've just studied and actually use it. The focus here isn't on being perfect, it's on communicating, getting their ideas across in a real, meaningful way.
But here's the thing. These ESA blocks, they're not meant to be stuck in one rigid order. The real power, the real art of teaching, comes from how we arrange them.
So the one you probably know best is what Harmer calls straight arrows. It's totally logical, right? You engage the students, you study the language point, and then you have them activate it. It's simple, it's effective, and it's a fantastic foundation.
But this is where things get really clever. The boomerang sequence. It completely flips the script. After you engage them, you throw them right into an activate stage. You have them try a task. And why? Because it lets you see exactly where the gaps are. The study phase then becomes a direct response to what you just saw they needed. Then they activate it again, but this time they're armed with the new language. It's so powerful.
Okay, so that's our teaching framework. Let's shift gears now and talk about how we measure success. And for that, we're going to lean on H. Douglas Brown's brilliant principles of assessment.
Before we even list them, let's just ask the basic questions. How do you know if a test is any good? I mean, really, does it actually measure what you think it's measuring? And is it anything like using the language in the real world?
And those questions lead us right to Brown's 5 criteria. A good test has to be practical, easy to give, not crazy expensive. It's got to be reliable, so it gives you consistent scores. It has to be valid, meaning it tests what it's supposed to test. It needs authenticity. It should feel like a real-life task. And finally, and this one's huge, it needs positive washback. The test itself should make students learn better. So here it is. This is the critical link. How do we design our lessons so that they naturally prepare students for assessments that actually meet these criteria? How does our teaching flow directly into good testing?
And here's that connection in black and white. Look at this. The boomerang sequence, where students try a real task first, lines up perfectly with the principle of authenticity. An authentic test is all about doing something real with language, which is exactly what that first activate stage in a boomerang lesson is all about.
And don't just take my word for it. Bachman and Palmer nailed this idea back in '96. Authenticity is all about how closely our test task mirrors a real-world task. That's the goal. And a boomerang lesson is basically the perfect training ground for exactly that.
So, let's make this super concrete. Let's talk about how we use this exact framework at IELTS FOCUS to prepare students for something as high stakes as the IELTS speaking test.
So we run our mock interviews as a boomerang lesson. First, we engage them, talking about strategies. Then, boom, they're in a full practice interview. I don't stop them, I don't correct them, I just listen and diagnose. The study part that comes next isn't some random grammar lesson, it's targeted feedback on the exact problems I just heard. Then, they do it again. And you can literally see the improvement.
So what we end up with is so much more than a test. It's a learning cycle. The experience is authentic. And because the feedback is so specific and immediate, the washback is incredible. The test itself becomes one of the most powerful learning tools we have.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought for you to take back to your own classroom. How can you find a way to diagnose a need before you teach the solution? Instead of starting with the answer, could you use a sequence like the boomerang to let your students show you what they need first? How can you make that shift from teaching a topic to responding to a need?